All right, we are live. And on today's episode, I interview a facilitator of transformation and change, a certified professional integrative coach, and workshop facilitator facilitating embodied movement experiences. His approach emphasizes mindfulness and self-awareness in the entrepreneurial path. A believer in the transformative power of creativity, he helps clients tap into their inner wisdom and potential, guiding them on a journey of personal and professional growth. Welcome to the winner circle, Loncen Gray.
Thank you, my man. What an honor. What an honor. You and I have
Mm,
connected a few times behind the scenes, and it's always been so amazing just because of the way you carry yourself, my man. It's very respected and honored.
Hey, likewise, likewise, and I'm excited to explore your hero's journey to now. And
Yes.
as we're and just to get to know a bit more about you. And as we are talking about for the call, the goal of these conversations is to really uplift, inspire, and empower everyone tuning in just to move forward with greater faith and belief
Mhm.
in themselves on their hero's journey ahead, kind of stepping outside like the normal in quotations, like 9 to 5, safe
Yeah.
world
Yeah.
into the unknown, pursuing their passion, pursuing living their win.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so our first question sets this up like on a positive front, because these are positive conversations. And that is, Lonson, what do you love about your personal world right now? Not about the like what's going on in the outside world, but what do you love about your personal world right now?
Just that it's aligning a lot closer to my inner child and the dreams I've had as a child. And, I've been doing a lot of shedding around what it means to be a contributing adult in this world. And, with that, seeing responsibility differently, that it can actually stem from inspiration, that, inspiration can be the driving force to actually get lots done. And yeah, I went through a huge change just recently where I really gave myself permission to drop into the creativity that I like in my world. And I was very amazed at the results. So it's transformed not only, my own inner world, but how I deliver to my clients and the people that I work with overall. So yeah, connecting more to
Mhm.
that youthful essence.
Amazing. And I'm really excited to delve into all of that. But first, just so the guests get a bit of an idea of who you are, and it listed a bunch of roles that you play. And in addition to those, like your father, your friend, your mentor, you're an
Mhm.
ally, so many more. And through all the roles that you play, whether that be as a facilitator, coach, what would you say is your mission, your overarching mission that guides you in everything that you do?
I want to help people to step into their own experiments, to not necessarily, follow so closely behind others, but really to step into the experiment of their lives, right? There's a lot of processes out there right now that focus on a lot on formula and getting the right formula to make, the right money and all of that stuff. And, although there's absolutely a space for that and it's needed, I see a gap where it's really helping people to anchor into their own self-trust and see what unique possibilities they can come up with on their journey that is different to what they're seeing around them. And there's something very different about stepping into this space because it's, you hear about being authentic and all of that, but almost like it's romanticized, but there's a very real essence that is a risk. It's a little bit more edgy stepping into that. There's the potential of being ostracized by it. So it takes a little bit more of a thicker skin and an ability to hold your center when you're really stepping into that authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And being that that's been a lot of my path, I'm familiar with it, learning how to navigate it. That's really what I specialize in helping other people do that are interested in that.
Mhm. So could you kind of get more into what that means? Like step into your own experiment? Like could you
Yeah.
kind of exemplify what that means?
Well, we are naturally creatures, driven to community. We want to be a part of community, and going against the grain of community often means that it brings up feelings. You have to, you'll feel different, you'll feel wrong. And so the tendency in us is naturally to want to align with community, even if the community is going in a different direction than we're inspired to, right? Sometimes we'll get these intuitive hits that are so faint at first, whereby we're being called in a certain direction, but yet because the community is saying, no, this is what happens here, this is the way we do things, we'll ignore the subtle voice of intuition and head in the direction of community, thus eliminating the potential of an amazing adventure, right? So it really is about taking those subtle cues from the intuition and making space for it so that you have enough room between you and the others in the community to really hear the impulses that are meant for you, and as well as building the courage to follow it, to be willing to step outside of convention, to be willing to be eccentric, different, odd, have all of those labels cast against you because you're so anchored to the trust in what's coming through.
Mm-hmm. So, how does one begin to listen and cultivate their intuition?
Well, for me, it's really about creating the space for it, So I mean, it's a bit more of a lonely journey because you have to really get used to your own company, and around that, it's creating this space for self appreciation. I'll call it, because self love is used so much, it's almost becoming a cliche, right? But it's like, how do you appreciate yourself? How do you really create space to anchor into the appreciation of you, the journey that you've been on, regardless of how rocky it has been. There's been significant ways that you have added not only to your own life, but to the lives around you, and to really take an inventory of all of that. And so by
Uh-huh.
appreciating, creating the space, and paying more attention to the subtleties that come up. So, journaling is a good activity for that too, as these things come through, to really create a mechanism whereby you can actually see the reflection of what's coming through you and be able to create action, inspired action from that.
Mm-hmm. So, you're mentioning that there's like an innate thing in humans drawing them to community. So, how do we balance the importance of community
Yeah.
and space where we could spend time alone and cultivating that alone time so that we can learn to listen to our intuition and just to listen to ourselves.
Well, my perspective is that as we fully honor the space of self, it makes it better for community, because then we learn to respect the space of other, whereby if I fully know what it feels like when I need space, and I give myself permission for that, when I'm around you and I notice you need space and you're exhibiting signs of that, I'm more likely to encourage you because I know the benefits, not only to myself, but to us as a group. So as we anchor in stronger to our own individual poles, it's like when we come together, it's more of a dance, it's more of a flow. It's a better flow because we're not expecting that we stick to these rigid structures with each other, when it's like, sometimes we do need to retune our forks to, the greater evolution. And then, you come back, you speak from what you're able, you give what you're able and willing to contribute. And, I do the same, and we're, it's more of a flow when we're in tune with that deepest part of ourselves, rather
Hmm.
than, approaching community from this place of dependency, which a lot of them, not a lot of them, I think it's evolving, as with everything right now, everything's evolving. But I mean, there was a time to which community was really geared towards a leader, the leader's perspective, and I mean, in every community, you see the shadow side of that, whether it's gurus or I was watching that Netflix video with that yoga teacher. Uh,
Yeah, Bikram.
right, right, right. All over the world, and people felt gypped by that. But the problem with it is not just with him, but it's giving up that inner authority to that outer person. And so,
Hmm.
the more that we can anchor into our own truth, our own sovereign inner authority, and then mix, it changes the dynamic of the group. Being able to willing to speak up and speak truth, even if it's something difficult, hard to hear, you know,
Hmm.
that's very important. So,
So how does this concept play in regards to relationships? Like pertaining to um, dependency while also an
yeah. Well, I'm
independence.
I'm actually going through the process right now with a woman who's extremely self-aware and, high emotional intelligence. And so we just create space to communicate, to bring it all out, even the uncomfortable parts. And then, being also open to recognizing where our shortcomings are. So, as an example, there was a situation actually that just came up this morning whereby I was feeling a little on edge. And just from all of the stuff that I'm doing in my business, I'm starting this new process with her. And I was noticing subtly, like there's this almost like this competitive vibe between us. And, normally I would simply box that in and no, I'll just keep it to myself. I don't want to throw the relationship off. But what I've been doing lately is just like both of us have been communicating openly, just about everything. And what I find for me, because this is new for me, this is like, a whole new experiment. But as I'm doing that, I'm feeling a lot calmer because I'm allowing myself to be heard by taking the risk to speak up. I'm also hearing her deeper. I'm not running away from the difficult parts. Like, if I make a mistake and she's confronting me on it, it's just about being present to that instead of trying to run away or hide it or. And so what ends up happening is that both people end up being heard. You feel safer. You're able to see each other for who you really are and not these illusions that we sometimes bring into the relationship based on, what our fantasies of what we're looking for in a woman or in a man. And it ends up being a lot more straightforward.
Hmm. What happens if the communication, the channel is not open? And I believe you've been there in the past. Like you're mentioning to me, more of a avoidant personality in the past, and
Yeah.
that type of personality like doesn't communicate often. So what happens when the communication is only one-sided? Like what have you learned from that, and how do we
Yeah.
fix it?
Well, and I mean, you brought up a really good point because I have been avoidant. Like my attachment style is avoidant. And first of all, I had to go through some pretty sharp lessons in relationships ending and, really realizing where I contributed to that. But in a situation now, like if I'm engaging with my partner and she's not speaking, it's really a case of checking in to honor and first of all ask if now is the right time, and if not now, when, and to really ensure that there's a level of presence there in the engagement. If not, then I would address it. Just I'm feeling that as I'm speaking right now, you're not really present to what I'm saying. Are you feeling
Hmm.
off in any way, right? So a lot of
Hmm.
times by reversing the picture, because sometimes, yeah, they may have something going on in their life that they are not aware of. So helping them clear that brings the presence back to the situation and the relationship.
Yeah. And sometimes it just gets to a point where you need to exit. You need to exit that relationship, that community,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
that like employment or that identity that you've held for yourself. What have you learned about exits? We could start with
Yeah.
relationships, and then community, and then your own self role, like your own job or roles or identities that no longer
Yeah.
serve you.
Well, it was a little bit of a longer learning curve for me because, as you've mentioned, right, my attachment style was anxious attached. So, I had no problem cutting people, situations, circumstances off. So the first step for me was really recognizing what was a healthy cutoff and what was just an unhealthy cutoff based on my pattern.
Yeah.
And then from that, yeah, like as far as just cutting branches off that just need to be because they're unhealthy. I don't have any problem with that. I find now that yeah, I'll speak up. I'll say something. I'll ask their perspective where their what their needs are in it as well. But if if there's still a lack of honoring, then it's, there's no reason to maintain it because it's just going to cause further frustration. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to go in the direction of, and that's the beauty of it too. What I'm finding as well is the more that we speak up, that we speak our truth, the uncomfortable pieces, the more we find out in community who actually vibes with us. Because those that don't, they'll be repelled by what we say. Those that do, they come closer. So it makes it really very much a filtering process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the analogy of the branches, whether that be a relationship, community, or just kind of self patterns that you've been enveloped in, whether that be your employment or identities you held for yourself. And as if they're no longer serving you, cut them off
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
to create space for new branches to grow.
Yeah, well, and ultimately, I mean, the world around us is a reflection of what's within. So, I mean, the more that we do the work to honor ourselves, and that includes speaking up, the more that we find people that align with us and also honor themselves.
So you mentioned like the first step was like listening to your intuition. Once you are able to listen to your intuition, then it's a matter of building courage.
Yeah.
What have been the ways you've learned personally and professionally to build courage with yourself and with your clients?
Well, I think, you know what, my feeling is that we have to do some work on redefining vulnerability because again, these words are thrown around so much that it almost misses a part of what vulnerability is. And so when you look at it from the perspective of embodiment, there's a sensation attached to it, right? There's a risk. Oftentimes there's that feeling in the belly of excitement. It's like anxiousness. And we don't want to step further in the direction of what we need because, oftentimes it means that it's intensifying that feeling. But from my perspective, vulnerability is the chance of experiencing like a full bodied exhilaration, that feeling of I did it. It was scary, but I took a chance to show myself, take off all of the layers of protection and step out into the world in the way that my heart is leading me to. And then there's this feeling after of like exhilaration, excitement, that anxiety transforms. So that's a big part of it is to understand the physiology of what's happening inside of our unique bodies, where we're experiencing things and what does it really mean? Because these feelings may be intense. A lot of times it could push us away from the things that we actually want. And that's where the courage comes is to take the risk to step into the experiment to show who we really are.
Mhm. So yeah, with that intuition and that courage built, then we could step into and explore the transformative power of creativity. What is that?
It's different for each person. I find the wants and needs are so varied. At the end of the day, we want to be loved, we want to love, we want connection. But, that breaks down even further when you look at each person's unique circumstances, how they were raised. But yeah, some people want to be out in front. To them, it means like having a massive stage presence, a massive following online. While to others, their big thing is, it's a lot more quiet. They don't want to be seen, but yet they want to have an impact. They don't may not even want to have their face shown, but they want their art out into the world. So there has to be allowance for all of it, understanding that, it's not about comparison. Just because it looks different to each other, we're all doing it in our way. And just because, my thing may be I want to be on stage doesn't mean somebody who's in the background that simply wants to share their art is anything less. And
Mhm.
yeah,
And doing so, I believe, takes us to our win. What does that mean to you, winning, being a winner?
for me, it's like looking back on your life and actually see your own transformation, your own evolution, to be able to say, you know what, I did it. I'm doing it. At one point, this where I am right now, I didn't actually think was possible. And here I am. I made adjustments, I made changes. And Yeah. So that when it's like you have your final breath, it's like you can look back at your entire life and all you feel is bliss because although there was challenges, you stuck to it. You made it through. You did it.
You're doing it. It is, this is it right now.
Yes.
The
Yes.
process,
Yeah.
The,
Yeah.
the
Nailed
sweetness of the song is the process.
it. Ooh, ooh,
Uh,
yes. Yes, sir.
um, so what does going for your win, living your win, embodying your win, what does that look like for you in your life today?
For me, there's still things that I'm critical of myself. I think one of them is overthinking, and I want to be able to relax more to actually be highly creative in front of the camera. And so that's my next this year's project is to step up more and more. And because I've gotten used to sharing videos. At one point that was my major sticking point. But right now there's a lot of creativity I want to share with the world. I have besides designing these I have crazy ideas for these like a retreat that I want to do that's just strictly based on art exploration and embodied movement that for me is next level. So yeah.
hmm So, well, first of all, in regards to your sharing, like you have all the tools. You have the presence, the personality, the knowledge, the wisdom. So I'm excited for you to continue to share. The only thing stopping you from sharing is yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I realize that. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so let's take a moment to acknowledge some of your accomplishments, some of your bigger wins that you've had, some things that you're most proud of on your journey. They could be anything. So yeah, like this floor is yours. Like what have
Well,
been some of your biggest wins, accomplishments, things you are most proud of?
yeah, like even when I was working, I have a knack for understanding what is needed in a certain environment. So, I've in quite a few organizations, I worked my way from the bottom to the top pretty quickly. And in one case, I got awarded a 3-week trip to Cozumel, Mexico with my partner at the time. And I
Ah,
was given this massive recognition in front of, our staff of 300 that I was like blown away by it. So, I have this big achiever inside. And um, yeah, so I mean, on that side, there was that. But then, yeah, starting my business was a big thing. Went through a lot of fear around that, really stepping in fully. And experiencing a lot of different emotions as a result, being able to process those. In my work now, I help quite a few people in just anchoring into their own experiment, as I was saying, and that for me is a big accomplishment. As far as accolades and stuff, yeah, I mean, I've earned my integrative coaching certification which was pretty intense. I've been through some pretty intense experiences as far as embodiment, like fully facing aspects of myself that were in the shadow, were things that I, was not proud of. I had a lot of work to do around anger and rage was a big thing for me, and I feel like I'm on the other side of that now. So, that's probably one of my biggest, for me personally, that is the most meaningful because in my family lineage, there's a lot of anger issues that, we've had to resolve. So, although it's
yes.
always, it's always still potentially below the surface, I find that communication and the tools that I've been learning have been tremendously helpful. So,
Yeah. How did you resolve that anger? Like what were the tools and methods you've implemented?
well, embodiment, and this is why I got into this line of work because of what it has done for me, but it's really mapping out what's happening in the body and realizing that it's not just the stories that are taking place in the mind, but there's a whole chemical soup of stuff happening within, right? And I was able to map what was happening for me whenever I would start to get angry
Ah.
because I'd often feel like this bubble block in my chest between my heart and my throat. And the more that I kept it in, it felt like a pressure cooker until finally it came out as anger and projecting outwards. And
Hmm. So could you get more into like what is that? What is embodiment? What does that, could you define what that means? Kind of explain?
yeah, so Rightfully so. This has been a term that is brought through. Like this is a based on the feminine. I learned this through this modality called the five rhythms, and actually was a male facilitator, which is why I was really open to it. But as I dug into it, this originated in California as far as the term and bringing the psychology to it. But I think this, we're all connected in a way through our tribal essence. Back in the tribal days, we also used to dance, move a lot more. And so it's bringing, my definition of it is bringing the body into the process of transformation to realize that, our experience of this life happens through our visceral connection to the experience. So as we are present with each other, I could be in front of you and connected to you from the mind state, yet be blocked from our intimate connection, right? Or I could be connected to you, whereby I'm looking at you right now. I'm slowing down my process. I'm feeling into you. And it's a different state of connection. It's a deeper state of connection, whereby I'm seeing Derek, the being, and not just engaging with you from this mental capacity. So it
Mhm.
brings in a level of depth of intimacy, not only with other people but with ourselves and just how we move in life, to be able
Mhm.
to look at a flower and take it in, like really take it in, the beauty of it, walk, experience the silence. That's probably the first step, really tuning into the silence,
Mhm.
getting comfortable with the silence, and then hearing the words weave over the silence.
Yes, it sounds like a lot of slowing down, presence, and of course, breath would have to play a role in it as well. It is all well of just all the
Huge,
senses.
huge, huge, huge. Yeah, breath work that has been instrumental in my journey too, because it's like the more I've been doing this really intense breath work whereby you do these holds,
Mm.
the squeezes. I know that there's names for it. I'm not too familiar with the names, but it's like, and then you release. As you release, you just feel the sensations and allow that to anchor into your body, and it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, are you able to share it? Like, is it like could we share a quick round of this breath work of that you, or would you just explain it like
Yeah, so you
whatever is
start,
more
yeah,
appropriate?
the best way to do it is lying down because then you can fully like disengage. But you start with your stomach. You take a full breath in, out, and then up through your chest. So you do, we'll do three of those to start very slowly. So it's going to sound like, and for every exhale, you really feel the gravity of your body pulling you into the bed. And then we go through a
Okay.
round. Go ahead.
So it's an inhale and then exhale right away. So quick
Yeah,
inhale, exhale,
yeah.
drop in.
Yeah, exactly. So inhale is using your stomach first, moving up to your chest all the way up, and then you release both at the same time. And as you release both, you just like allowing the body to go limp, like really feeling into that release.
Yeah, melt into the floor.
Exactly, yes. And then you go do it. Then we do a round of intense, and we do that for about 3 minutes.
In,
Yeah,
out.
in out, the same format, but really really fast.
Okay.
And then at the end is you on the last one, you take a deep breath in, and then you squeeze your lower extremities first, then your stomach muscles, then moving that squeeze all the way up, and then you release fully, letting the air out. And then at the bottom part of the release, you just don't breathe and just experience the sensations. And so it almost feels like you're passing out, but you're not.
Uh-huh. So that squeeze, like you squeeze the lower extremities, the stomach, and all the way up.
Yeah.
Um, are you're retaining your breath while you're doing that?
No,
Like,
you
are you
just
not?
yeah, so you're releasing the breath and then at the bottom you're holding it. So you're not breathing at all. You're just completely surrendered to the experience of what's happening in your body. So for me
Okay.
what that did for me as an overthinker is it got me out of my head and just like the over processing and it's like it tuned me into the greater field, the sensations that were happening inside of me and yeah, just released from the pressures and stuff. So it was good.
Yeah, it's amazing all the different breath techniques you could use to kind of transcend like the thinking mind and just really step into the present,
Yeah.
to our divine self, our divine nature.
Yeah.
Um, Other tools you've used along the path include journaling. That's one of the tools you use. We'll start there. What kind of journaling practices do you use and have had success with?
So it's just like honoring, okay, like a lot of shadow work practices. So for me, honoring the when I witness parts of myself that are moving based on fear, I make sure to note that, to turn it into a practice of honoring. So um, as an example, sometimes I could be pretty aggressive in my approach, and it's with not intentional, but yet at the same time, as I'm speaking, I speak very direct, and there's sometimes a tone to my words. Yet not everybody's open to receiving that, right? So that means that when I'm engaging with people, there has to be an adjustment somewhere. And so I use journaling for that. So to say, you know what, I see you. I see that um, in this moment, you may need to be a little bit aggressive. I see you coming up. I know why that it has happened. And it's okay to be that way. And it's also okay to release that,
Mm-hmm.
to experiment, to try things differently than they may have been done in the past.
Nice. So journaling, breath work, those
Yeah.
have been some of your fundamental self-care tools. What are some other self-care tools that are essential for you on your journey?
Yeah, so for me, it's like so I used a lot of like artistic processes just because as an early artist, I was an early artist before, right? So um, drawing with the non-dominant hand, just allowing like a fast flow of of expression out, and then looking at the image, seeing what words pop out, and then writing based on those words, that sort of thing, you know.
Mm,
Um, uh, yeah, just expression through movement. I love dark music. I love bassy music. Really
okay.
connecting with the root chakras, and yeah, just getting some expression out of that, allowing that more that darker side to play. I love that stuff, and I think that we don't do enough of that. So that's actually one of the things that yeah, I'll be doing in my in-person workshops. I have some really dark music. I used to do this actually when I did it before, but playing like extremely dark music and allow the darker side of a person's expression to come out. And each person's expression, the darkness playing in the room, and it's actually a very beautiful thing when we stop limiting ourselves. So yeah,
Mhm. It sounds like it gives like that using that music, it gives them permission to release what they've been holding on to. A lot of people hold on to
yeah,
that
exactly,
darkness
exactly.
because of shame or like they don't want to recognize it, so they hold it in.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Especially because if we've been shamed for it in our past, we start
Yeah,
doing it to ourselves. So yeah, it's
because it's
stepping up.
bad, right? It's bad because it's
Yeah,
identified as
exactly.
bad, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, for me, there's a difference. Like, I've often heard, oh no, but anger's good. You just could express it. But you'll notice a difference in society when it's like when different people express anger. And being 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 a black person cultured, it's different anger coming from me because it fits a stereotype, right? Versus
Yeah.
a petite woman who is expressing her anger. She would be more encouraged to do it than someone like me, right? But we all need it.
Yeah. So like once we release that darkness, that anger, and also do some shadow work, which I want to get into, it allow space for ourselves to see and embody, play with, be that inner child and allow that to emerge, correct?
For me, it's more just it allows us to relax, to allow our being to come out, to allow who we really are out. So there's no intention behind it. There's no formula to it. It's just that we can be present to life in the way that we feel most present and express what we want to express because we
Yeah,
give
okay.
ourselves permission for that.
Okay, okay. No, I like that. So then where does the inner child play into this?
Well, that's where the for me where the magic is. It's like when we connect to because as we grow older, it's like we develop these adult minds, and
Uh-huh.
so our ingenuity, our inspiration, a lot of times we're disconnected from. Meanwhile, the inner child is the aspect of us that remains connected to those worlds of fantasy. You know, it's
Uh,
just that our responsibility as adults is to exist within the reality, drawing on the inspiration of the fantasy. It took me a
yeah.
while to get understand that.
Okay. What have you learned in that understanding that you could share?
What have I learned in the witch? Sorry.
The understanding of kind of connecting with that inner child and shedding that adult mind.
Yeah, just that there's a lot of ingenuity that comes from it. I one thing I'm very powerful at is I could create a whole unique system that is different to what I'm seeing around me.
Uh,
And which is what I'm doing right now. And I'm really proud of the work that I put in, including connecting with my inner child, because I'm bringing something that's unique. I'm not seeing too much of it elsewhere.
yeah.
Although I'm tuning into worlds that have existed, like embodiment has existed long before I got here, but the way that I'm putting it together is uniquely to me, and that's really what I want to help other people do. Is the same thing.
Mhm, 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 mhm. So how are you helping clients tap into that inner child, that creative space?
So I run my activation sessions a little differently. I've heard of other people doing it their way, and I think each one of us does it differently. But an activation is really a process of embodiment whereby we're activating an aspect of the self that may be dormant, but yet related to a person expanding in a certain way. So sometimes it's an emotion that they fully need to feel on the negative side so that they could feel the mirror effect of that, to step into, give themselves full permission to experience the goodness of the positive emotion. Sometimes it's a
Hmm.
vision, it could be something small, but they're not giving themselves permission to fully step into it.
Yeah.
So I set it up so that, right from the start, they're leading the process. I just create the container and the safe space to welcome them out. I'm not leading in that process. I'm not saying too much. I'm just reflecting the whole time. And in every experience, what they come away with has been profound, even for me, to see, them step into their power and to realize that it's them. Because in this space, what I found is, and what I used I used to like it, but whenever we're in a coaching situation, we put the coach up on a pedestal, and where they know more, I'm paying them. Um, so yeah, it's their knowledge that I'm drawing from. But when you can reverse the picture and have them see that that wisdom is inside of them, and finally that the moment that realization sets in that, oh, it's me, yeah, it's you,
Hmm.
it changes everything.
Yeah. Helpful for you in this process has been the shadow work, and that's like a word used by a lot of people nowadays. What does shadow work mean to you? What does that look like, and how does one do that?
So it's just I see that as the areas that we've been unconscious in our patterns in our living. So there's we call it shadow work, but it's for me it's just really unconscious patterns that we simply do. It's like wearing an old shoe. You've worn it for so long that you don't even realize you're wearing it anymore. And that
Mm.
shoe may have it may have a thorn in it or something that it's not feeling comfortable, but yet we don't know how comfortable or how much better it can be because we've gotten so used to that shoe. So
Yeah.
it's a process of drawing awareness to the fact of the shoe that we're wearing what it looks like, the characteristics of it, and really being conscious in our choice. Do we want to continue to wear that and move forward?
Yeah. How do we make that unconscious conscious?
Yeah,
How
well,
do we
it's
bring
simply,
awareness?
well, by asking questions, by realizing where there's um, contrast.
Hmm.
A lot of times when we're stepping into new experiences, there's so many ways. Going on a trip even can bring awareness to shadow, you know,
Yes.
where we feel we're shrinking back and to be
Yes.
aware of that feeling.
Can you exemplify like a shadow that you've uncovered, an unconscious pattern you've uncovered with yourself and how you resolve that?
Yeah, well, actually, a lot of the ones that I've used already. So anger, uh, let's see, I'll pick a good one here. Let me see, think. Actually, anger is the biggest one for me. So
Okay.
for me, that I encountered through movement, through embodiment, to realize where I was feeling agitated and what my body was doing as I was going through that process. So I was able to map out my response to anger through movement with other people that were stimulating that in me.
Mm,
And giving myself permission to take up space, but in a healthy way that wasn't harmful to other people.
okay. So how did this journey begin? Like, how did you transition from kind of working like for other people to becoming an entrepreneur and like writing your own story?
That's a beautiful question. I would say it was gradual. And first, I had to step in fully. There was a point to which I was kind of like dabbling in it and wasn't really making any solid movements. And it was only when I fully crossed the barrier and stepped in fully that things started transforming. And and I know it doesn't work this way for everybody, but for me specifically, especially kind of, I consider myself a little bit of a rebel, where I want to find my own way. I don't necessarily want to find the most efficient, easy way. So yeah, I had a lot of growth to do and just accepting the intensity of the experience, adjusting to that, realizing that there was actually a pretty big safety net when you're working because the check comes every couple weeks and you have
Yeah.
everything set, right? So going from that into an environment where nothing is, and just because you have a good idea doesn't mean that's a business. So there was a lot of adapting that had to happen, but I wouldn't change any of it because I feel so strong and anchored on my path that you know I, I have no problem stepping into new experiences that are going to bring about new learning now. So and let me preface this by saying I do have people helping me. Like I have a one woman who is very strong in business. She's definitely way farther than me, but I take what I need from what she's giving me and still run my own experiments, to find out what really anchors in solid.
Yeah. In that transition from like the safe secure net of having like a regular paycheck to
Yeah,
becoming an entrepreneur, there's definitely a lot of fear. A lot of these fears would be financial. That's one
yeah,
fear.
yeah,
Another fear could be the fear of failure, the fear of
yeah,
being seen,
yeah,
the fear of stepping out. What
yeah.
have you learned about all those fears on
Well,
your
yeah.
path?
Well, and that's why I was able to step out when I started embodiment because understanding what was happening in my body as I was going through these processes made it easier to step in and easier to regulate myself as I was going through these situations that caused a lot of fear. As an example, when I first started putting out videos, I went through for the first couple weeks, every time I put out a video, I went through almost like this depressive response afterwards, whereby I just wanted to lock myself away in my room and not come out and just I wanted to take the videos down, but I was challenged by people around me to just leave them up because this is a part of the process. So whether it's stepping out, whether it's getting used to the financial piece of it, it's like when you realize that it's all just brings up this intensity. inside of us. And as we regulate ourselves into the process, you start to realize there's a pattern to it. That with everything, whether it was stepping out my first time, whether it was, going into the process of money, anchoring into that, it's like there's a pattern there in how I respond to these situations. So understanding my core response within my body, within how I approach these things, made it easier to adjust to them.
Mhm. So, I
Does
feel
that
like
make
that'd
sense?
be, yeah, that definitely makes sense. And like, I want to take an example, like, of me personally, and I'm sure a lot of your clients as well. And that'd be like the financial piece. So how do you help a client with that fear of being able to like pay their bills, when they're leaving that safe, comfortable, known world of a regular paycheck to being solely responsible? Everything is on your shoulders.
Yeah,
And then if that fails, then that's on you.
yeah,
um so
yeah,
that for me, that brings up a lot of fear.
yeah.
How do you help with that?
Well, it's first of all, it's understanding what their panic response is. What does that look like in them? And it's helping them to slowly change that. So, sometimes sometimes if they're really in a situation where they're panicking and something needs to be changed, then it's the basic things. It's just like, okay, what can you do right now to eliminate a lot of the fear? Sometimes it's getting a short-term job, something very basic but practical. Other times it's just a matter of understanding what that response is doing in them and helping them to slowly adjust it. So, maybe it's like anytime they're coming up against their edge, they start going into this loop of depression and they pull away entirely, right? So it's helping them to stay engaged and to realize that what they're feeling it isn't based on the actual situation that's happening. This is just their body responding to old situations. So,
Hmm.
for me, it happens through presence and being able to experience the discomfort, the pains, the tightness. A lot of times when I'm in sessions with people, there's common areas where we feel tension, maybe in the abdomen, maybe in the heart, throat. Sometimes it's in the back, places in the back. Sometimes even the extremities, like the legs, right? But there'll be a common pain that comes up. And that could be an area for exploration. So as we go into that area and experience it fully, we get new information. We're not
Hmm.
resisting anymore.
Hmm. So let's take ourselves to a crossroads where many people get stuck at. And that's the crossroad of should versus must. So the path of should is like the
Yeah,
shoulds from society, our parents, our education system, like to play
yeah,
it safe.
mm,
Versus the path of must is that calling in your heart, whether that is to start your own business or to take that trip or to do that training or to pursue that relationship, whatever it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
But like the should, like, oh, like this is like you should do this. This is the safe. This is the safe route. This is the known route.
yeah,
And people get stuck. They get paralyzed. So, what advice would you have to someone stuck at that crossroads, like feeling that pulling, that calling of the
yeah,
heart on
yeah,
the road, taking them, wanting to take them on that road of must, but
mm,
like
mm,
that
yeah,
old that programming, that
yeah,
past conditioning,
yeah,
that began even before they were born, right? It's systemic and it's multi-generational,
yeah,
um, drawing them
mm,
back onto that path of should. So,
yeah.
what advice would you have for that hero at that crossroads?
Well, I would be interested to hear your reflection after I say this, but for me, I would say that, especially in the people that I see, it's the difference is how much of us is engaged in it. Like when you're saying should, a lot of times that comes from the mind. It's like we're thinking of, okay, yes, I got to make this person happy. I should do it for this reasons, and maybe cultural for some people. It may be in the family. It may be to try and impress somebody else. It may be to prove something, but all of those things lack a depth of intimacy with life, where we're like fully engaged. Like for me, when I've heard that calling, there's like a pulling, there's just like there's there's aspects of me that want to be engaged in the process. Like I don't know how or why I'm moving in this direction, but this feels right. This is something that I'm going to do no matter what. And even as I'm saying that, I can feel that in my body. It just everything becomes alive, right? I may not know the next step, but there's a level of engagement, uh, a question mark at the end of it that is very alluring. It's like um, for me, I see it as a woman that is just very attractive. It's like I don't know why I want to be around her, but there's something about her that's pulling me forth magnetically, and I'm drawn to go in that direction. And I could take that same concept and use it to life. There's just doors that when you open it, it's like there's a calling. It's like it's calling out the best in us. It's
Yeah,
calling us to meet our edge.
for sure. And I feel though there's just such deep grooves, some scars, if you will, um,
Oh, okay.
unconscious patterns,
Yeah,
unconscious patterns that draw us away, or that instead of leaping over that edge,
yeah, yeah,
following that intuition,
yeah,
following that, it's like, no, I'm just gonna sit down here. I'm just gonna fall
yeah.
back into my old routine. I'm gonna fall back into my
Uh,
old ways.
okay,
And
so what I hear you saying from that is like, how can a person differentiate the difference between the should and the must from the heart?
or how can one like detach from those those
Yeah,
forces that keep us, that pulled to the should, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
magnetic pole of should versus the
yeah.
magnetic pole of must.
Yeah, well, and okay, so I first need to preface this by saying it's different for everybody. Everybody has a different way of accessing it, right? But I would say if I was to draw it down to something, it's that we have to have the contrast of experience to realize what it feels like to experience a full-hearted must. I must do this versus that grooved path of what I should do. And to give ourselves permission to do the wobble in between that, because it's not just a case of when you discover what a must is, you're like, oh, okay, all of a sudden you're on the track. Because there's almost like this it's like this playful flirtation with it. We don't know if we could trust it right away. It's like we
Mm,
move closer to it. It feels good, but should I do this? Because I've been told all my life I need to do the should.
yeah, it's interesting. Like when you say it that way, I look at all the times I've been pulled towards my must, and I wouldn't regret any of them. So it's it's always worked out. Like that's like
Yes.
interest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So so just based on what you said, you're very much a person that when you know what you want, you go for it. You have a very sharp navigation system, and you have a lot of courage and strength built up in you already. So, for you, it's just like, of course, there's no other way. I know
Nah,
what I want. I'm going after it.
I don't know if it's been that. It's not that easy, but I
No, no,
guess.
but what I'm saying though is you have a warrior spirit. You are somebody that when you make up your mind to do it, you get it done.
Yeah,
You may have a bit of a wobble in it, but it's like you're like, no, this is so tantalizing for me that I'm going to do it and I'm going to dedicate myself fully to it.
yeah. And I guess once you step off that edge, it's like, okay, like here we go. Like there's no
Right?
turning back. So it's like let's
That's awesome.
let's
Yeah.
swim, let's swim.
So we all have
Beautiful.
our inner blueprint of moving towards what is our must or our calling. It's the
Mhm.
using your
So,
language.
so much wisdom shared so far. So thank you for all this.
You're welcome.
A lot of these teachings, a lot of these sharings that you've um, gifted to us has came to you by way of various mentors, helpers, allies you've met along the path. So just take a moment to acknowledge some of those people, some of those helpers,
Yeah.
some of those mentors, some of those allies who've taught you.
Mhm.
who've inspired you? Who
Yeah.
were they? What were the major takeaways you've taken from them that
Yeah.
you've incorporated into your embodiment?
Yeah. So, well, like, okay, so one of the gentlemen, his name is Evangelos Diavalos, and he was my embodiment coach and mentor. He was also like a financial mentor for me. He was
Mm,
probably one of the men that I've had the most challenges with in my life, but I learned a lot from him in the way of organization and fully stepping into an experience. So it wasn't only what I was learning through embodiment, but also just being in his presence and seeing how he embodied his
mm,
process and his life, that really helped me to anchor into mine. And then just many women, I give a lot of the women around me credit because um, women for me are extremely intelligent beings, and they've been dumped on in our society quite a bit. They've taken a lot of shit for us men. So I've had some pretty powerful female mentors. Another one, her name is Fran. I can't remember her last name because that's what I know her as, but she taught me about communication, proper communication, and how to honor communication in relationship with different people. And I've fully integrated that into my work. That's been one of the most attractive forces for me in just helping others. I didn't go in with the intention of helping women, but it just, I've through time now understand that they come to me because not only do I respect them, but I hear them. I hear what they're
mhm.
not saying. And so, yeah.
So, what exactly did Fran teach you?
She taught me this process of communication, listening deeper than the words, and to be able to speak to what is not being said. And it's such a powerful way to communicate that it when you do it, not when you do it as a process, but when you're that present to a person that you're hearing what they're not hearing and you say it ends up being this connecting point because people end up coming closer to you because they feel seen, they feel heard, and you're actually framing the way they see themselves, right?
Hmm. Hmm. So, what's like one step someone could better attune to that place, that frequency that Fran taught you?
Well, the first step is hearing yourself, hearing the things that are going on inside, paying attention to the subtle desires that you may have,
Yeah.
and give it space to breathe. And that's a huge one. I know for me, I've often felt shy or reserved to express my needs. And so just giving myself permission for that, hearing myself at deeper layers allows me to hear others deeper too, because it's not a
Hmm.
common practice in our world.
Hmm. Hmm.
We're
Incredible.
often, yeah, we're often told to attune external to ourselves, but when we can start hearing for the subtle impulses, it changes things because, it means that we're meta focused now and not just hearing from the ears. We're hearing with our entire being, present with our entire being. And it's a very different way to do
Hmm.
it.
Yes, I feel that is an act of self-love. What
100%.
does what does that word mean? What does that word mean to you? What have you learned about love?
That, for me, it's strongly based around permission, that I don't have to jump just because somebody needs something, that I can, really relax into my own process. That if I'm enjoying something, that I don't have to disengage from what I'm enjoying because somebody may not like it or disagree with it. That I could just in my presence, I'm loving myself, present to my own experience. Just, I love music, I love dance, and that to me is an act of self-love. Waking up in the morning, brushing my teeth and really indulging in the experience is an act of self-love. You know,
Hmm.
engaging with people that I like is an act of self-love. Choosing to speak
Uh,
up for my needs, all of that.
and then how do we take that self-love and share our love with others?
I think it comes naturally, it just comes from the flow. When we're in that state, it opens our channel to be more improvisational with life, with experience. We're able to give more from a place of not needing to measuring what we're getting back, but it's just,
Mm.
it's from this full state.
Yeah, no, I like that. When we're rooted in a place of self-love, that becomes our frequency.
Yeah, 100%. That's a really awesome way of saying it. Yes, yes.
Mhm.
More to that.
So, every episode, I conclude with the final three questions, and we got into that point. The first
All right.
question, through all the
Yeah.
highs and lows, that is this hero's journey, that is your life experience, what do you say has been the greatest life lesson you've learned on your path that you
Yeah.
feel called in this moment to share with us now?
What a beautiful question. I would say that the greatest lesson I've learned is just that I'm worthy without having to, just by being alive, just by being me. And so in that, it brings in the sense of just being okay to take up the space I am, that I'm not too much, that how I show up is enough. And so that's been something that's been reflected to me in these past couple of years that I've really anchored into. And I'm so appreciative of all of the people that have helped me to see that.
Hmm. Wow, thank you for that.
Yeah,
Question two. Um, in three words, how would you describe the experience you're having on this earth in this reality? It doesn't have to be a sentence, but just three separate words that what you would
Mm.
use to describe the experience you're having here.
Um, Resilience comes to mind, uh, creative, and connection.
Hmm. Okay, let's examine resilience,
Yeah,
creative, and connection.
yeah.
What have you learned about resilience?
I at one time had the perspective that it was always about getting somewhere where I didn't experience challenge anymore, or as intensely as I did.
Uh-huh.
And so what I'm now understanding is really life is about resilience, that I'm going to go through challenges. Sometimes they're going to be very intense. And so it's not so much about needing to be perfect and get to this place, this oasis where there's no negative things happening, but it's me getting back up again and, taking it a step further than I did before, two steps further, but just further than where I was. And
Hmm.
that's resilience, not
Yeah.
allow situations to defeat us, to keep us down, but just to add to our story.
Uh-huh. And why creativity?
Oh, it's just, I have been an artist since I was young. I started out as a visual artist, and now I've translated that into my movement, into my programs and projects. And I think life is, as much as it is a spiritual adventure, it's also a creative one. We're here to create and be unique and share with each other our uniqueness. So for me, it's what drives me. It's what fills me up. It's what I want to share with others because I get
Yes.
much out of it.
Yeah, I believe the life that we live is our greatest creative act. It's our greatest
Yes.
work.
Yep. You said it, my man. Oh, I love
Uh,
that.
and lastly, connection. How does one draw in connection?
First, it's about connecting with ourselves. It took me a long time to realize that I was chasing different relationships, ideals in people that I didn't really fully see in myself. But what I'm seeing now is that, as I go deeper to connect into me, to really honor the creative way I want to be, it enables deeper connection with others, such that I can be present with people now and really fully honor them and enjoy just taking them in without needing to add anything to the conversation, to the mix.
Mm,
You and I had a
beautiful.
conversation the other day that I really, appreciated you at a deeper level, like the sharing that you did and seeing just how far you came, So, and I'm realizing as I grow older, I am enjoying these experiences more. So it's pretty
Uh-huh.
amazing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that space with me.
Yeah.
Final question. We examined your past, we examined your present, and let's use a little magic and we'll transport ourselves into the future, and we'll
Yes.
find ourselves along an 85-year-old Loncen Gray. Who is that
Mm,
85-year-old man? Where are you? Who are you
mm,
surrounded by? What is the legacy
mm.
you've left here in your 85
Yeah,
years?
yeah,
And what are
yeah.
the predominant feelings in your being?
Well, I have many communities that I engage with still. I'm taking life very happily. There's a smile on my face a lot more times than not. I'm deeply, madly in love with my partner. We travel, we do different things. I also still continued to engage in group work with others, facilitating different processes. And by that time, the wisdom that I would have, and that, I see myself with a huge level of mastery in this process of not even needing to add too much to the process, that I'm so attuned to the nuanced ways people engage and move, that I masterfully can help a person adjust their situation just through little tweaks in how I show up and help them to step in further. And yeah, just a celebration of life is what it feels like, just really celebrating each moment, celebrating the small things more than ever, and yeah, but then have visited a lot of the places I would have wanted, partaking in other people's workshops that inspire me. There's a lot of people doing some amazing things right now that I love that. I want to be like stimulated by others doing powerful work too, that they're just as engaged. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what are the predominant feelings in your being, in your body, in your soul?
Yeah, just appreciation, expansiveness. I'm just stepping into a very powerful time right now too. So there's this almost like a giddiness in my core, because now
Uh,
I have enough life. I've had enough life experience now that I understand what my particular process is and how to anchor in. So yeah, I'm excited.
okay. So I'd just like you to just take a moment, maybe close your eyes, connect with your breath, and just really step into that 85-year-old space, that 85-year-old man, the one who's just connected with so many people,
Mhm.
so many communities, facilitated group work still is, traveling with your partner, a giant smile on your face, develops huge mastery, and then yeah, the predominant feelings in your being, appreciation,
Mhm.
expansiveness, giddiness. I would love you just to soak all that in, just
Mhm.
feel into that. And I'm going to bring us back now. I'm going to bring us to the present. And that 85-year-old Loncen, he sends current day Loncen a message. What does that 85-year-old man whisper in your ear?
Just to relax, just relax. I have a workshop coming up. This is so perfect too, because I have a workshop coming up on Saturday, and my perfectionist tends to come up a bit. So attuning to that 85-year-old self is just relax and have fun with it. It's going to happen how it needs to. So thank you, my man.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Appreciate
beautiful. Thank you for this conversation. For people wanting to connect with you, take part in your workshops or your coaching, they can find you online at trueembodiment.com, and they
it.
can
Yeah.
also find you on Instagram at Loncen Gray, where you will be posting more video content and creative projects in the future as per
Yes,
this
yes, that
conversation.
is a thing. I had an issue
Yeah.
with Instagram, so I stopped posting a while back. But you're right, I'm going to get back on it, so it's good.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Any last closing words?
No, just thank you for this. Just in hearing myself speak, I realized there's certain things that, I was kind of putting in the back of my mind, but are actually forefronts. So I really value your questions, your interview style, and yeah, thank you for this opportunity, my man.
Right on. To close every conversation, we bring our fist in for a digital fist bump.
Yes,
Boom.
yes, awesome.
Welcome to the winner circle.
Thanks, my
Thank you.
man. Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
All right.